NHL regular season recap, night 129, and we kick things off with an ass whipping thanks to the Detroit Red Wings and I guess the St. Louis Blues. The Wings score 4 goals in the first period, and it's pretty much over after one. Patrick Kane, Michael Rasmussen, Robbie Fabry, and Alex DeBrincat all scoring their 11th, 12th, 14th, and 20th of the year, respectively. Bolduc scores his first of the year in the second to at least break the shutout bid, but then JT Compher and Alex DeBrincat once again make it 6-1, and that is all the scoring we'd see in this one. Alex Lyon goes 22 for 23. He was not all that busy. Jordan Binnington gives up 4 goals on 14 shots, and that's the end of his night after the first. 34 shots in total for the Wings. They were definitely the better of the two teams, obviously, with the 6-1 victory. Huge win for them. They're looking to stay alive in the playoffs, of course. St. Louis in the same boat, so this is a huge loss for them. But again, can't really ask for more from the Wings in this one. It's a massive, dominant, controlling win. 6-1 over St. Louis is the final. The Islanders hosting the Lightning, and this is another one of those games that, despite the fact that we still have 25 games to play in the season, roughly, has some huge playoff implications. The Lightning end up getting it done in this one. It's a 4-2 final. Nick Paul and Nikita Kucherov in the first, Braden Point in the second. We go through most of the third without a goal, but 13:44 in, Anders Lee makes it 3-1. 17:25 in, Brock Nelson makes it 3-2, but they're not able to score that third and tying goal, and Luke Glendening ends up getting the empty netter for a 4-2 victory. For the Bolts, Andrei Vasilevsky goes 32 for 34, his best game in probably a few weeks. Ilya Sorokin, meanwhile, not all that busy, but not able to get the job done either. 17 of 20 and .850 save percentage. Again, pretty big playoff implications in this game. The Lightning do have 2 more games played than the Islanders, but after tonight, they're now 7 points up on the Islanders, in particular for that last wildcard spot. So a really big win here for them. They needed to take care of business, and they were able to do just that. 4-2 is the final. The Devils taking on the Canadiens in another game with some pretty big playoff implications, at least for New Jersey. They also take on Tampa Bay today at 1 o'clock. That is a massive game, with Tampa being the current last wildcard seed and Jersey being just 5 points behind them. But yesterday against Montreal, the Devils looked a little shaky early on, but they were able to get the job done like the Bolts were. No goals in the first, but then in the second, it's Brendan Gallagher, Timo Meier, Nick Suzuki, and Andre Palat all scoring. So it's 2-2 after 2. In the third, Nico Hischier would score on the power play with about 5.5 minutes to go. Jesper Bratt would score about 3 minutes later to make it a 4-2 game. Suzuki would score with a shade under 2 minutes to play to make it a 1-goal game, but Nico Dawes and the Devils held down the fort, and it ends up being a 4-3 victory for them. Nico Dawes in this effort, not fantastic, but good enough for the win. 23 of 26, while Jake Allen goes 20 for 24. Neither of these guys terribly busy. Just 50 shots total between the two teams, but the Devils will absolutely take the 2 points. It's a huge win for them, 4-3 over Montreal. The Rangers taking on the Flyers, and this was a really entertaining game despite the fact that the Rangers are definitely the better team on paper. We start things off with a Matt Rempe and Nick Delorier fight, which was a banger. I mean, these are two guys, one who's just a giant mutant freak human being, the other one who's made of like sandpaper and boulders. I don't know, Nick Delorier has got to be one of the toughest guys in the world. Anyway, that was a great tilt. No goals in the first, though, but that was an absolute banger. Second period, Alexis Lafreniere scores his 17th of the year. It's 1-0 Rangers after 1. 2:36 into the third, though, Ty Forster would tie it, and we have a 1-1 game until about 4 minutes later, when Matt Rempe, after that massive tilt, gets his first NHL goal. It's from Braden Schneider and Barclay Goodrow, and that ends up standing as the game winner. Igor Shesterkin with another massive performance in this one. He goes 39 for 40, a .975 save percentage. Sam Ersson goes 22 for 24, a .917. Both these guys played well, but Shesterkin shows why he is a world-class goalie and why he is such an important part to this Rangers team. They get the job done. They keep their first-place spot in the Metro Division. They have an 8-point lead on the Hurricanes. 2-1 over Philly is the final. The Capitals taking on the Panthers. These games always get a little feisty. These aren't really like true rivals, but these games always find a way to get a little sandpaper in them, and it's pretty fun. No goals in the first. Nick Cousins and Sonny Milano trade goals in the second. Tom Wilson and Alex Barkov trade goals once again in the third. Both of those on the power play, and it's 2-2 headed to overtime, where off of a brutal Sonny Milano turnover, was not a good shift in general, this one for him in overtime, but he turns it over. Sam Bennett to Gus Forsling, and it's GG. G. The Panthers win it 3-2 over Washington. They're now within just a point of the Boston Bruins with a game in hand. For Washington, they sit 6 spots out of the last wildcard spot. They definitely wanted this second point, but not quite able to get it. Charlie Lindgren goes 26 for 29 and 897 save percentage. Meanwhile, Stolarz goes 22 for 24 for a 917 in the winning effort. A big win from the Cats. The Capitals definitely wanted the 2 points here. 2-1's the final. 3-2. The Canucks taking on the Bruins once again and looking for a little redemption after getting blanked by Boston in Boston a few weeks back. No goals in the first. The Bees score 2 in the second. It's Boqvist and Heinen with their 3rd and 11th of the year. In the third, the Canucks looking for some comeback magic, and they're able to get it. Brock Besser scores 12:49 in, and then with just a few seconds over a minute to play in the third, Filip Hronek ties it, forcing OT. In the overtime, the Canucks do get on a power play. Quinn Hughes with a perfect little shot pass to Brock Besser, who tips it in, and it's a 3-2 overtime victory for the Canucks over the Bruins. Both goalies really solid in this one. Swayman was frankly the better of the two and probably deserved to win, but he does end up getting just the 1 point. 36 of 39, a 923 save percentage, while Demko, the much less busy of the two goalies, just 20 for 22, a 909 save percentage, but does get the 2 points in the winning effort. This was a great game. I would love to see this be a cup final, but we've got a few months to go before we see that. It's a 3-2 win for Vancouver. The Avalanche hosting the Leafs, and after having a 2-goal lead in the first, thanks to Arturi Lehkonen and Andrew Cogliano, the Avs spit this one back up for the Leafs, and they end up losing it by a final score of 4-3. Tyler Bertuzzi would score on the power play in the first to make it 2-1 Avs. He would score again 14:45 into the second to tie it at 2. Mitch Marner scores a few minutes after that to make it 3-2 Leafs after 2. Rantanen ties it 4:41 into the third with his 30th of the year, and then the game winner goes to Tyler Bertuzzi, completing the hat-trick effort. Yay, woo. The Avs lose this one 4-3. Alex Yuryev not great tonight, 26 of 30. Ilya Samsonov, the same number of saves, but 1 fewer shots against, so he ends up getting the victory. This is a tough one for the Avs. They fall down now to 3rd in the division behind both Winnipeg and Dallas. For the Leafs, they're now within just a few points of the Florida Panthers. I believe it's a 7-point gap. 6-point gap and a few games in hand for them. So we'll see if they're able to make up some ground on these guys, but it's a huge comeback win again. The Leafs have just been so good lately, so not surprising to see them win this game, but in the fashion they won, it's a bit surprising. Not the most common thing to see the Avs spit up a lead like this, but they do it tonight. The Leafs get the W. 4-3 is the final. The Senators taking on the Golden Knights, and man, if the Senators played the way they've played the last 2.5 weeks, the entire season, they'd probably be in or fighting for a playoff spot right now. They beat the Vegas Golden Knights, albeit in a shootout by a final score of 4-3 tonight. Marchessault scoring in the first. Stevenson makes it 2-0 early in the second, but Chabot and Batherson both tie it before the end of the second frame. Josh Norris would score in the third to make it 3-2. Chandler Stevenson ties it up with 1:15 to play. We force overtime. Not really a crazy overtime. Ottawa definitely the better of the two teams. Shots 6-2 there. But we go to a shootout. Tim Stützle, the only goal scorer in the shootout. And again, Ottawa gritty, finding a way to win. They do it against another really solid team tonight. Anton Forsberg, 26 of 29 and 897 save percentage. Thompson, 30 for 33, a 909, and of course gives up just the one extra goal in the shootout. Vegas will take the 1 point. They're only a few points back of Vancouver, and by a few, I mean 11. Vancouver's got a pretty safe lead in that Pacific Division, to say the least, but they'll take the 1 point. They're not in danger by any means of falling out of a playoff spot for the time being. Again, the Sens not really playing for too much at this point. It would have been nice to see them put this effort in about 2.5 months ago, and maybe they'd have a shot at the playoffs, but again, the momentum is good for them. You love to see it if you're a Sens fan. 4-3 is the final. The Stars taking on the Hurricanes in what was maybe expected to be the game of the night. Both these teams playing very, very well as of late. The Stars, of course, on a little bit of a slump, but in general, they've had a fantastic year. While the Hurricanes, of course, have been rolling. Pyotr Kochetkov has been really good for them. Ottinger, of course, an all-star for the Dallas Stars. So expected to be a good goalie game here, and that's exactly what it was. It's only a 2-1 final. Jason Robertson scoring in the first. Aho scoring on a breakaway in the second. A nice little shot from him. And then Wyatt Johnston makes it 2-1 in the third. That's the only goals we get. Mira Heiskanen with 2 assists in this effort as well as a good game from him. Neither goalie saw a ton of rubber. It was only 21-16 on the shots in favor of Carolina. Ottinger goes 20 for 21, a 952 save percentage. Pyotr Kochetkov just 14 of 16, of course, and 875. Not his best game statistically, but these games are kind of hard. We only face like 16 shots in 3 periods. That is not an easy game as a goalie, so I don't, punish him at all for that per se, but the Stars will definitely take it. They move to 3 points ahead on second place in the Central Division, while the Hurricanes, of course, still have a ways to go to catch up on the Rangers. So a really entertaining game in this one, despite not too many shots. 2-1's the final for Dallas. The Preds taking on the San Jose Sharks, and as you'd expect in a game like this, the Preds get it done. They're still fighting for a playoff spot, so this is a game they need to win, and they take care of business. Kiefer Sherwood in the first, Philip Forsberg in the second, and then Granlund, Sherwood again, Zadina, and Nyquist on the empty net in the third. It's a 4-2 final. UC Saros 23 for 25 and 920 save percentage. Capo Kakinen much busier, 31 for 34, a 912. Can't complain about the effort from him at all, just not quite able to generate enough offensively of your San Jose. Needed win for the Preds, of course, again, still fighting for their playoff lives. They are in the last wild card spot as it stands today. Of course, there's a lot of really, really tight races there in the West, so we'll see if they're able to hang on to it, but this is a game they absolutely 1,000% needed to win, and they were able to get it done, so kudos to the Preds. The Wild taking on the Kraken, and this was a massive game as well. Two teams that are not in a playoff spot, but definitely still alive in the fight for one. Before this game, they were separated by just 1 point at 60 for the Wild and 59 for the Kraken, and the Wild take care of business. They do get scored on first. Vince Dunn just 36 seconds in, but they hold strong, confidence stays high, and they end up kind of waxing the Kraken. It's a 5-2 final. Johansson and Kaprizov would both score before the end of the first. Then it's a really solid second period from Minnesota. Boldy, Kaprizov, and Mermis, I think I'm pronouncing that right, all score in the second, and just like that, it's 5-1 after 2. Jordan Eberle would add one more in the third to make it 5-2, but just not enough at all from Seattle in this one. Marc-Andre Fleury was fantastic. He goes 30 for 32. Joey Decord pulled after giving up 4 goals on 13 shots. Philip Grubauer, of course, would give up the one more. Just a really solid effort from Minnesota, man. They're now just 2 points out from, of course, the Nashville Predators. Seattle just 5 points out, so they're not dead in the water by any means, but the winner of this game definitely gets a solid leg up, and that, of course, goes to Minnesota. 5-2 is the final. The Battle of Alberta once again, and despite how good Edmonton has been in the last 2.5, 3 months, Calgary gets it done in this one, and despite all the trade rumors, Tanev, Hanifin, Markstrom, Kadri, like all these guys that could potentially be on the move, they're just 3 spots out of that last wildcard spot trailing Nashville. So this is a huge win for them, and of course it's always a huge win regardless of playoff status in the Battle of Alberta. Kadri, Pospisil, and Hanifin score 3 consecutive before Zach Hyman makes it 3-1 at the end of 1. Hyman would score again early in the second to make it 3-2, but after that it's Hunt and Hanifin with his second of the game that makes it 5-2 Flames after 2 periods. Edmonton pulling the goalie very early. Blake Coleman scoring on the empty net with just over 7 minutes to play. Matthias Janmark would score one more to make it 6-3, but the game's pretty much over by that point. It is a 6-3 final. Stuart Skinner, not his best work, 25 of 30 and 833 save percentage, while Dan Vladar actually has a pretty solid game. He goes 32 for 35, a 914. That might be your future starter, Calgary, so you better hope he keeps this work up, depending on what happens with Markstrom, but a massive win for them. They stay alive in the playoff race, and it's against Edmonton, so it's always a huge win. 6-3 is the final. Final game tonight, the Kings taking on the Ducks, the California rivalry here. And it was a better game than I would have expected. Silverberg and Fiala trade goals in the first, both of them on the power play. Sam Carrick scores shorthanded to make it 2-1 Ducks about halfway through the second, but Drew Doughty scores also on the power play, and it's 2-2 after 2. We head all the way to a shootout in this one, and big save Dave able to get the job done despite giving up the 1 goal to Leo Carlsson. Pierre-Luc Dubois and Trevor Moore would both score on John Gibson, who faced 50 shots tonight. 50. Trade this man, please. It's a big win for the Kings. They are now tied with Edmonton in points. They do still technically sit in that wild card spot, but despite how good Edmonton's been and how on and off the Kings have been lately, they are not out of it when it comes to a divisional spot for the playoffs. They do only sit 6 points above the last wild card team, but they got a few games in hand. I'm not really worried about the Kings falling out, but they course still need to get the points, especially against teams like the Ducks. So John Gibson made it hard. He went 48 of 50, a 960 save percentage in the losing effort. Dave Riddick only faced 24 shots. He stops 22 of them, a 917 save percentage, and just a shade better in the shootout, and he's able to get it done for LA. So that's it for NHL regular season recap night 129. Kind of a long one tonight. Some really, really important games. Hopefully you guys got to tune into a bunch of them. There's a decent slate of games Sunday, but not quite as many with major playoff implications, but definitely check out that Lightning and Devils game. We'll talk to you guys later.